This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio. In association with Haversley, experts in the sale of lettings, estate agency and block management businesses. If you're thinking of selling now or in the next 5 years, get in touch. They're a friendly bunch at haversleygroup.com.
Welcome to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on New Horizon Radio. And this is very scary because I'm flying solo today. So bear with if there are any technical hitches. There's a start. So a little bit about me. I asked a friend to describe me, actually, because each week I do a little bit about me. But I asked a friend to describe me for a change. And she said, glamorous, bold and joyful. And I thought those were really, really lovely adjectives. So thank you, Cicely, for those very kind words. What have I been up to? Been very busy, actually. I had my bridal event. I went to see Superman. I don't know why I'm doing that, but anyway, I went to see Superman. Went to Milton Keynes Theatre to see Calamity Jane. Had a mammogram. Ladies, get your breasts checked regularly. If you're over a certain age, you will be called for a mammogram. Do not ignore that letter. It's very important. Deeply uncomfortable, but very worthwhile. A birthday lunch for Henry, which was a less than fabulous experience at the Navigation Inn, sadly, and trying to change my money mindset, which is easier said than done. What am I up to? I'm going to go and see the Fantastic Four, so it's going to be interesting to compare Marvel with DC. I've got a wardrobe weed consultation coming up. I've got a Queen night at the Archers, so I'm really looking forward to that, weather permitting. A yoga retreat with Ali Cook. A garden party, again, weather permitting, and a sound bath experience on Sunday. And I'm going to be working with Waterstones, and I'm talking about the Sleepwalkers. This book is by Scarlett Thomas, and I really, really wanted to like this book. And I really, really did persevere. I don't normally, if a book really doesn't engage with me, I will give up after, I don't know, a couple of chapters. But I was quite intrigued. So obviously she's doing a good job with her, with the way she's written it, but the characters were so utterly unlikable. It was very hard to engage and actually even give a damn about them. I find it really important that I've got, as with any media, whether it's film, television, books, whatever, if I don't engage with the characters or I don't feel that there's any degree of likability, I'm just not going to get into it. But yeah, this is the premise. So it's a twisty gothic tale with haunting power. So this is the premise. Still reeling from the chaos of their wedding, Evelyn and Richard arrive in an idyllic Greek island for their honeymoon. It's the end of the season, and out at sea a storm is brewing. They check into an exclusive hotel, the Villa Rose, where the proprietor, Isabella, flirts outrageously with Richard while treating Evelyn with a rudeness bordering on contempt. We all know these kind of women, actually. She's definitely not a woman's woman. Isabella tells them the story of the Sleepwalkers, a couple who stayed at the hotel the year before and drowned in a tragic and unexplained accident. It starts to feel like the entire island is obsessed with the Sleepwalkers, but what at first seems like a fun tale to tell before bed quickly evolves into a living nightmare. This is how it's been described. Exhilarating, suspenseful, and subversively funny. The Sleepwalkers takes elements of Daphne du Maurier and Patricia Highsmith and blends them with her own unique sensibility to create an unforgettable thriller of rare intelligence that cements her reputation as one of the most exciting and original authors of her generation. I just didn't get it. As I said, I did persevere. Because it was set in Greece. Greece is particularly dear to me. I've spent many a happy time there. But this couple, they shouldn't have got married. And, it turns out that Evelyn is sleeping with her husband's father before the wedding. So it's all very, it's just not particularly great. So, I say I wasn't feeling it. Anyway, the Sleepwalkers, if this is your cup of tea, we were at Waterstones in Milton Keynes. And I'm talking about my Cineworld review. Superman. Not all heroes wear capes except when they're called Superman. I'm not a fan of superhero movies as a rule, but grew up watching the original Superman with the OG, which was the great late great Christopher Reeve. And he to me epitomized the action heroes of my childhood. And as I say, I'm not a fan, but I was really, really impressed, actually. I did discover that I prefer DC to Marvel. So after I see Fantastic Four today, I will let you know my comparison. But I definitely, from what I've seen lately, DC is definitely more in my heart. So the movie, I think the movie seems simpler, kinder, and a little bit more colourful. And I felt it didn't take itself too seriously. It felt quite self-deprecating. And I like that. I don't like it when a movie, which is basically a load of escapism, is taking itself too seriously. So for me personally, it poked fun into itself, and I really, and I was quite invested. And also, I have to say, movie makers, why do we have to make films 3.5 hours long? No movie, apart from Wicked, needs to be that long. It was 2 hours, 10 minutes, which was perfect for my goldfish attention span. I absolutely loved Rachel Brosnahan as well. She embodies the Lois Lane character beautifully, which was captured by Margot Kidder all those years ago. And again, just the physicality of both so David Corenswet, who plays Superman, he very much embodied the Superman with the sort of the blue-black hair and the sort of chiseled jaw. And my son, who's a big fan, said that he feels that this particular sort of iteration has come a long way since sort of the Henry Cavill days, which were quite dark, and I think a lot of people were put off, actually. So I really enjoyed it, actually. But director and writer James Gunn, who's now official, head of DC, actually hones in with his signature style while pushing boundaries with his iconic character. And we went to see it in SuperScreen, and gosh, what a difference. I thought it was going to be too loud because I'm a bit sensory since becoming menopause. It's a loss of estrogen. I know that that's a thing. But I definitely felt the SuperScreen, when you sing something like that, they're flying at you. It's just incredible. So to get the full picture and the full experience, SuperScreen is the way forward. So definitely worth the extra money. But thank you, Cineworld, for this generous gift as well. My son Benji, as I say, who's a big fan, and my sister Angela, they're both huge DC fans, and they were very appreciative of it as well. But I will let you know my thoughts on the Fantastic Four next week. And I went to see Calamity Jane at Milton Keynes Theatre. So Calamity Jane rode into Milton Keynes Theatre, which is on till Saturday. By the time my show goes out, it would be over, but it is touring the country. So Calamity Jane is based on the much-loved Doris Day movie. This foot-stomping new production features the surefire classics, including the Deadwood Stage, Whip Crackaway. If I'm really honest, and again, I don't like being negative, I just wasn't feeling it. I went with my sister, who's a Calamity Jane purist, and so she knows all the words for all the songs. And I love the film with Howard Keel and Doris Day. And the last time I saw Calamity Jane, which was probably 2018 with Jodie Prenger at Milton Keynes Theatre, I really enjoyed it. But it just feels a little bit dated, and I've seen musicals in this era already, like Hello Dolly, and it didn't feel like that, actually. But this, I don't know. I mean, I did appreciate the sort of the actor musos, the sort of the orchestra were on stage, so not all the actors, but most of the actors were playing instruments, which I'm in awe of. The fact that you can sing, dance, and play an instrument and act blows my tiny little mind. So, and there was no doubting the talent. And let's say an intimacy of a very small stage. The set felt quite small, but I just didn't feel it. I was very tired, if I'm really honest, but I just wasn't feeling it. Carrie Hope Fletcher, who plays Calamity Jane, is amazing, and I've sort of watched her career blossom. She's been in The Addams Family and sort of Bad Cinderella, and I've just watched it as a vlogger as well. She's prolific on YouTube and all sort of social media platforms, very much a body positivity advocate, and she gets terrible trolling because of her weight, and I use the word inverted commas. She's had a baby, she's comfortable in her own skin, but my God, social media, when it's not used positively, can be a really negative thing. But she's such a positive role model for body positivity, and there were so many young girls there last night who were clearly fans of hers, and it was just so heartening to see. So she does play, so she plays Calamity really well, the biggest mouth in Dakota. But I did feel that this production felt shortchanged. The songs, I say, felt shorter. Some of the words my sister said had been changed, so I don't know whether that was sort of being a little bit PC. But it just didn't invoke musical theatre for me. I didn't invite that spark, that joy, that when I'm so invested. So yeah, I mean, again, wasn't a big fan. But again, if you love Carrie Hope Fletcher, this is a great vehicle for her amazing talents. And as I say, the classics are in there. It just felt like they were shortened, and there's some new songs as well. And for a purist, that's quite difficult. But make your own mind. If you're able to see it, as I say, Calamity Jane is touring the country. So I wanted to talk about Mixtape, which is on iPlayer. It's one of the most delightful shows I've seen on television, and it feels like it should have been commissioned by Netflix Netflix, actually. It's a really, really good show. So basically, Teresa Palmer and Jim Sturgis are fantastic as two people who reunite years after they dated as teenagers. And it's set with a backdrop of a great 80s soundtrack. It's set in Sheffield, and they've got sort of Joy Division and Depeche Mode, and it's got that sort of whole 80s vibe. So we've got the younger sort of Alison and Dan, and the older Alison and Dan, and sort of it does switch between the decades quite seamlessly, actually. Sometimes I don't like it. Sometimes I feel like if there's a lot of jumping around, and I need explanations like 3 months later or 3 years later, whatever, but it feels quite effortless, quite smooth, actually, and so invested in the characters. And what I was saying earlier about if I'm not invested in a character, or I don't, the characters don't feel particularly likable, I'm not going to be engaged. But right from the get-go, I was so engaged with both of them, and it was just such a wonderful, wonderful show. So basically, Dan and Alison meet at school as teenagers, and they fall in love, and it's first love, and it's all very intense. Alison comes from a very difficult background. Her mother is an alcoholic, her dad is not around, and her mum's boyfriend is less than salubrious, and they're living in abject poverty, of which she's understandably ashamed, in that Dan lives in a really comfortable, loving home environment, and his parents are very, very happily married, but his mum wants more for him. She's not necessarily ambitious for him, but she wants him to play the field. She doesn't want him to settle down with the first girl that he falls in love with. So she's not overly welcoming towards Alison. She's not unfriendly, but something happens to Alison, which is utterly catastrophic. In fact, two events which I won't spoil. And she leaves. She goes to Ireland, and then she ends up in Australia and becomes a best-selling author, as you do. And then so they're both married to. So Alison is married to a surgeon, and Dan is married to a nurse. And the marriages aren't that happy. You can sense there's discord in the marriages, which I guess would explain that when he sends her a Facebook request, she very happily accepts. And when they sort of start talking again, it's like, how are you? And all these years have passed. But they don't actually physically talk. What they do is they send each other Spotify links of all the songs that are the soundtrack of their youth. And actually, it makes it so much more interesting, actually, because sometimes music speaks louder than words. And as I say, they've got these songs, and they play the songs through, and then it takes you back. And again, it's not disconcerting. It flows beautifully. Anyway, long story short, Dan goes over, he's a music journalist. He goes over to Sydney on the premise of writing a book, and he meets with her, and what happens. And I don't want to spoil it. And it's a bit of will they, won't they, and a bit frustrating. And are they going to get together? And the spouses are not the easiest as well. But honestly, it is so beautifully acted, and you really just willing them to get together. The sliding door moments are incredible. I have to say, Teresa Palmer is an Australian actress. I've never seen her before. She's absolutely beautiful and just absolutely mesmerizing. And Jim Sturgis, who the only thing I've seen him in was One Day. He's just so likable. He reminds me of Martin Compston, actually. He's got that really, just that lovely warmth about him. And I say, you're just willing them to get together. And it is such a lovely show. And the characters, both young and older, are likable. And I say, you're willing them to get back together. So will they or won't they? I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Adam Lind, aka Adam Floating Home. Welcome, Adam.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
That's lovely to have you in. And I know you're very busy because you're going to have a potential book tour coming up. But tell me how you got onto, living a life less ordinary on a boat.
Yeah, good question. So it's a really tough one when someone asks how I ended up on a boat, because the story goes back quite a long way. But essentially the crux of it is, when I graduated university, my wife and I decided that we weren't really ready to kind of get a real job, let's say, or join the corporate world, or kind of start your traditional life. So we decided to pack a bag and take a bus from London to Amsterdam. We'd saved up £5,000 between us, and we'd kind of said to our family and friends, like, maybe we're going to be gone for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and just kind of see what the world, we had this calling to see the world. And whilst we were on the road, we kind of just took to this idea of kind of experiencing life through travel. and we realized our money wasn't going to last us very long. So we decided to use hitchhiking as our form of transport, rather than, the idea was to not use any trains, planes or buses, and just rely on the kindness of strangers to take us from A to B. Don't worry, I'm getting back to how we ended up on a boat with this.
Fascinating.
And whilst being on the road, we decided to set ourselves this challenge where we were going to try and hitchhike from London to India. And this ended up being a 5-year journey that we can go into more. But at the end of the 5 years, we came back to the UK after living on the road for 5 years, and lockdown happened. So we were moved in with my mother-in-law. We'd been out the UK for so many years. We didn't really have a place in the UK that felt like home. Like, my family are from London. My wife's family are from the Midlands. Our friends were spread between Leeds and Bristol, so we couldn't afford a house. Renting felt really scary, and it was on one of those famous lockdown walks that my mother-in-law went on with a friend, where she came back and she said, "Oh, my friend actually lives on a boat on the canal." I was like, "Would you guys consider that?" Because she knew we were looking for our next step in life. And we were a bit like, no, like, that seems weird. Like, I didn't even know people lived on these boats. And my wife particularly was like, it will be too small. I need somewhere to do yoga. I need somewhere to plant my vegetable garden. But I started watching some YouTube videos about it and just became infatuated with the idea, and felt actually maybe this is a really good step for us, because we could own something, but we weren't bound to one place. We could still travel around like we wanted to. So we went to the bank, asked them for a loan. They kindly gave us one. Bought this boat with no experience and not really knowing what to expect, and 5 years later it's completely changed my life, really. So, and here we are.
It's an incredible story, that the fact that you were brave enough, and I use the word brave, you probably didn't think so, that you decided that you were going to be quite nonconformist and not sell your soul to the corporate devil, and you're going to do something completely different. But was this something that happened in your childhood that made you sort of feel like you wanted to try something different, that you didn't want to do the normal?
Yeah, there was a really pivotal moment for me. So my father was an alcoholic from before I was born. And when I was 17, he died. And his passing was really interesting, because I'm like a teenage boy. All my friends are worrying about like what nightclub they're going to go to at the weekend, or who they're going to kiss on the weekend. And I was like just questioning everything in life. Life all of a sudden felt very finite and impermanent. And I felt like this veil had been like lifted off of society. And I was watching all these people, like older people in my family or friends or teachers, just moan every day about like, oh, my job, or oh, stress, or the slog, or this day-to-day life. And I was like, with my dad dying, I was like, well, where's he gone? And like, one day that's going to be all of us. So why are we wasting so many years doing things that don't serve us? So I kind of at age 16 made this vow to myself that I will live through experiences rather than chasing kind of what's fed to us by capitalism. And there's definitely pros and cons to both, but yeah, that was a real shifting moment for me of choosing a life less ordinary.
And I've lived with active alcoholism. For you as a child, as a young boy, it must have been really difficult. And for me, the way I coped, for want of a better expression, was Al-Anon, which is this amazing organization which helps people families or partners who are affected by alcoholism. I'd never heard of it. It's not something I knew about AA, but Al-Anon, literally got me through the last 3 years, and the support that I got from Al-Anon was incredible, and I will never ever be able to say thank you enough for what they did. And did you have help with Al-Anon?
My mum definitely did. I would say, echoing what you said, huge advocate for Al-Anon. I know my mum owes so much of her mental health, regaining her mental strength from Al-Anon. It's a tough one, because I was like I say, he was an alcoholic from before I was born, and they got divorced when I was 3, so he moved out the house, and I would still see him like every other week or every week when he was having better periods. But essentially I was raised by 2 really strong women, like my mum and sister, which definitely shaped kind of the person I am today. And it was when I was age 11, they decided to tell me officially that he was an alcoholic. And it was funny, because I always knew there was something strange about him, because if we had plans with friends and it was my dad looking after us, like often maybe on the day my friends' parents would cancel, or all of a sudden they couldn't come anymore. And I noticed this pattern that when my dad was looking after us, things just felt a bit secretive or shifting. But I was handed all these books about, what it's like to have an alcoholic parent. And I think they helped a little bit, but ultimately, yeah, I just tried to use this adverse experience as a bit of a gift. Like chapter 2 of my book is called The Gift of Adversity. And I really believe that when bad or challenging things happen to us, they can end up really building us as a person. So yeah, weirdly, as a full cycle, I feel quite grateful for the experience.
Yeah, and I echo that as well. I think about where I was 9 months ago to where I am now, and it's just, I feel like I've come full circle back on air, just living my best life. But yeah, as you say, you have to go through those dark times to come out the other side. It's like a phoenix rising from the ashes. So it's a wonderful story. We've got very deep very quickly, and we're going to carry on talking about deep stuff. Men's mental health. I know this is a subject particularly close to your heart, and as a mum of 2 boys, it is mine as well. And having seen my boys and my ex-partner go through that, it's really, really hard. And it's very hard because you feel really helpless. But it's wonderful that you are able to talk about it so openly and make it acceptable, and that 20 years ago men were not talking about their men's mental health. It was taboo, it was forbidden, it was shameful. Men did not cry. What do you think's changed?
Good question. It's a really strange one for me because being vulnerable isn't something I've had to try and do. Like being raised, I guess, in a household of 2 women, like emotions and tears were just prevalent all the time. So I feel like it was kind of instilled into me at quite a young age. I think there's definitely been this beautiful rise of more feminine masculinity. Like, we all have masculine and feminine inside of us. It's not bound by the gender that we're born. And yeah, I guess, it's probably one of the good things about the rise of the internet. Like people are able to experience other people's ways of life and other people's opinions on things. I've definitely been inspired by watching other creators or listening to podcasts of people that are happy to express their feelings. But I think men have always had these feelings, right? But they haven't felt like they had a place where they could express them. So I guess having pillars of society where people can now look up to kind of gives them the feeling that they can also express how they're feeling. But yeah, it's something I feel massively passionate about. I'm lucky enough to have experiences in like men's circles and men's retreats, and it's some of the most masculine appearing men who have so much trauma inside of them where they've never felt like they had a space to show it, maybe because they felt weak. I've seen a bit of a correlation where you get these really masculine men that when they open up talk about some really dark things that happened in their childhood, and there's this idea of like, if I'm like strong physically and strong mentally, like that will never happen again. But what that happens is we end up masking everything, right? And then it just like feels deeper and deeper inside of us, and then can lead to maybe addiction or just going down other wrong paths. So yeah, there's this idea of when we release it, say through words or through vulnerability, that it also like releases what we're storing and is, building up like toxicity inside of us.
And obviously you've got this huge platform now. Tell me about your following, because it's quite extraordinary. But you've got this amazing platform on which you can spread the gospel, so to speak. I mean, how many followers have you got on all the socials now?
Gosh, I hate talking about this kind of stuff.
It's important though, because you've got all these amazing. You have this incredible platform, and you do such good with it. Yeah,
that's kind of been the real balance for me. Like between Instagram and TikTok, there's close to 1 million people that watch the stuff I put out, which I'm so grateful for. It's such a paradox, because like I say, when I was living on the road and got to live in India for a year, we was just like living in the mountains. I was so detached from social media and capitalism and all of this kind of stuff. And then when I came back and moved onto the boat, I was really just making videos for my friends. Like my Instagram account was completely private. You couldn't be on it unless I like let you follow me. And friends would slowly be like, oh, you should make the account public. Like I want to show my aunt or my cousin what you're doing on this boat. I was like, I don't want all these random people watching me. And then one day was like, sure, okay, I'll make it public. Never expected it to grow as much as it has, and I'm so grateful. I probably wouldn't be sitting here, wouldn't have had the opportunity to write my book if it wasn't for that. But what I really try and do is create content that has some kind of value or meaning or follows an intention for me, because it can be so easy, especially now it's become my job financially, to like feed the algorithm of what you think people might want to see, rather than actually expressing yourself in a way that you want to be showing up. And when I wrote this poem called What It Means to Be a Man, And when I put that video out and it performed so well, it was this real validation for me of keep putting things out that you actually want to be saying. So yeah, it's been a real journey, the whole social media thing.
My following is not nearly as big as yours, but that I get that kind of, that whole like, you know, what do people expect and what do I want to do? And it is, as you said, is that massive paradox and that sort of internal kind of, you know what's going to perform well, but you also know that you've got to do what makes you feel good. And it is that a daily battle for you?
I think the bigger battle is also this idea of like feeling content with it. So chapter 9 in my book is called The Joy of Enough, because it's like, when I first started it and when I realized I wanted to grow more of a platform, I was like, you know, one day if I get to 10,000 followers, it will feel amazing. And then you get there and then you move the goalpost to 50,000 and then 100,000. And the feeling I have now, you know, about to reach 1 million is the same as the one of 10,000. It's like, is it ever going to be enough? And for me, it's how can I find contentment? And this doesn't just count for social media. I feel like this is a message for anyone, whatever stage they're at in life, is how can I find contentment with what I've already got? And then, you know, still be ambitious and strive for things outside of that, but don't lose sight of all like the greatness that you already have in your life. So for me, it's not so much the paradox of what I need to put out and not need to put out. It's, am I content with what's going on? Can I feel grateful for that? And then from that place, try and achieve more. Because I think that's one of the biggest curses of our society and social media is it never feels like enough. And we will just strive and strive. The goalposts will move further and further until we reach, you know, the highest levels of success. My favorite quote is one from Jim Carrey, who says, I want everyone to be a successful millionaire so they realize it's not the answer, you know? And it's like, what are we actually striving for, right? We're striving for things that we've never had in life. How do we know that £1 million and a big mansion is going to make us happy if we've never had it? So yeah, trying to find enoughness is where I'm at the moment. Gosh,
that's so true. Yeah, and I think we're all guilty of that, thinking, you know, when I get to a certain weight, when I look like this, when I drive this, you know, that's so eloquently put, actually, that I'm going to remember that. That's brilliant. And we are talking about your book. Tell me what it's called and how did you get started? Were you journaling beforehand, Adam?
So the book is called Floating Home: Lessons from a Life Less Ordinary. I've always journaled, and that isn't necessarily how the book became shaped. I was gratefully approached by a publisher that had heard a bit of my story around the traveling I'd done, living on the boat, seeing the messages I was putting out around mental health and vulnerability, and just I worked as a mindset coach for a while, so I'm posting a lot of stuff around that. And they gave me the opportunity to see if I'd want to work on a book with them. And it was crazy because when we came back from the hitchhiking adventure, I thought everyone would say, you've got to write a book about this, right? You know, we've been picked up by probably over 1,000 strangers in their cars, slept in, you know, close to 1,000 people's houses that we'd never met before. And each of them imparted a bit of wisdom into us to help us shape the life that we wanted. But you know how life goes. I had no accountability to actually sit down and write one. So when I was given the opportunity by the publisher, I just thought, well, this is it. And, you know, you sign a contract and you've got a year to write it. And it's been, what a roller coaster. Like some absolute highs writing it, some absolute lows. It brings up so much trauma, really. Like it's been very, very healing and a cathartic experience. And some parts of it I've actually used direct pages from my journal from when I was traveling. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster for sure.
Exciting. And the book is out when?
The book is officially published and out on the 25th of September, but it's available now to pre-order on Amazon and Waterstones. And if people wanted to do that, I'd be very grateful.
I bet these are words you never thought you'd hear yourself say. It must be a pinch me moment.
It definitely feels like my biggest ever achievement. The other thing doing social media is you're really trying to condense messages that feel really heartfelt into like 30 or 60 seconds. And I hate this kind of short form, attention deficit, fast paced society we've moved into, and being able to write in long form and having the space to write like 100,000 words on topics just felt like, oh, finally all of this, you know, short form madness I've been sucked into has now led to something that feels so deeply purposeful. And I truly, truly believe it's going to help people, which is ultimately the goal.
You're so incredibly articulate. Did you find that degree of articulation was it easy? Oh, there's me not being very articulate at all, actually, the irony. But, obviously, the way you speak is incredibly articulate. Was writing as easy as talking?
Good question. I love writing. You definitely become your own worst enemy because, first of all, thank you for thinking I'm articulate, because I definitely don't always see myself as that. You kind of go in waves, like particularly in the proofreading process. You have to read the book so many times that one time I'd read a chapter and be like, oh, this is so insightful and so good. I could read it again a week later and be like, this looks like sounds like a 4-year-old's written it, and there's no depth and there's no meaning, and who cares? Is it too self-indulgent? Are you putting in a story that's not going to resonate with anyone? So it's like, probably depending on my mood, depends on how I've reflected on the piece of writing. But the art of conversation and talking and words has always been something, I guess, that has come quite naturally to me. I don't think too much. It's kind of like stream of consciousness, I guess, coming out.
And it's interesting because writing a book, and everyone says, I mean, I'm guilty of this, I want to write a book, and I have started and I just haven't got very far. But the fact is, obviously, you were held accountable. But, everyone thinks they can write a book, but it's not that straightforward because, you have to have a beginning, a middle and an end. As someone who wasn't sort of, a trained writer, how did that come out? Did you just have your head in your hands some evenings thinking, oh God, I just can't do this. Structure, I don't get it. What does a writer do?
Full transparency. Having an editor to help me was an absolute game changer, because like you say, I would just like stream of consciousness, word vomit all my thoughts out, and then my editor at Bloomsbury is this incredible woman called Mireille Harper. I advise looking her up as well. She has become a very, very close friend because she's, read parts of me before anyone else did. Like, I'm talking so explicitly in the book, and some things, it's not like anything was taken out, but she then helped me take my thoughts and feelings and scope them into like more digestible chunks. And what I loved was she would never try and change my words, but she would read my piece of writing and she'd probe me with questions. So she'd like highlight something and be like, so how did you feel when this happened? Or what happened just before this? And rather than answer her, I would answer her into the text. And she has this incredible art of knowing how to flesh out a piece of writing into a digestible piece. So I can't take any credit for knowing how to structure a book, because this book would not be anything as close to how good it is without her.
That's incredible. The genius of editors. I think that the being an editor is such an important, as you say, all writers are reliant on their editors. It's a marriage, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the whole book process, like you say, is such a pinch me moment, and I didn't know how it all worked. But basically, when I was given a literary agent, amazing guy called Oscar, and he helped me write a proposal, and then it goes out to a few different publishers, and then you kind of decide who you want to work with. And despite it being Bloomsbury, or despite whatever the contracts were, it was Mireille on the call with my editor, because you're going to work so closely with this person. I just felt this like energetic connection that this is the person I trust to write this book with. So yeah, she's amazing. Oh,
it's so exciting. I cannot wait to read it. And normally I would have, when I have guests in, I would have read the book, but it's almost like a sneak preview. So it's a taster, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a taster. Very, very exciting. And we are talking about, we've got so much to talk about. I'm just trying to pack it all in. We're going to talk about travels and toilets, which I know seem crazy. Tell us about your travels, because I know you had the most extraordinary traveling time.
Yeah, again, hard to concise 5 years into 5 minutes. So yeah, when we set off on these travels, we'd noticed a lot of friends of ours were going to like Thailand or Australia, and we basically opened this world map and we were like, if we fly all the way to the other side of the world, we're going to miss so much of what's in between. It felt like there was a lot of untrodden lands in Europe that seemed really enticing to me. So because we were hitchhiking by land, we crossed 27 borders by land. So we went through the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Spain, all of these kind of countries. But what became more interesting was when we started to head a bit more east. So we spent a lot of time in the Balkans, in Albania and Montenegro, and then eventually crossed from Bulgaria into Turkey, where we spent 3 months. And I think Turkey for me was probably my favorite country and culture that we indulged in, particularly the more east we went, where it becomes Kurdistan, because the culture shift is just so different. And when I say the people are kind, I've really never experienced this kind of... We'd experienced kindness the whole way, right? We'd surrendered to hitchhiking, so anyone that picked us up was kind, but we'd often like kind of group a country by how long the average wait time was to be picked up. So in France it's about 30 minutes, in Spain it's about an hour.
Interesting.
In Turkey it's about 30 seconds. Like if the first car doesn't stop for you, it's shocking. And not only that, I'd say 95% of the journeys will insist on taking you for lunch or for coffee. But when I say insist, it's they'll just pull up at this like lavish restaurant, give you a feast. And we have this joke that the hardest part about hitchhiking in Turkey is that you leave that ride and maybe you're joining another highway and you have to wait a few hours because you know if you get picked up, you're going to have to go and eat another massive lunch and you're just not hungry.
That's incredible.
So yeah, the kindness we experienced there was amazing.
And your favourite country then by...
Yeah, it's just so diverse. Like you have beautiful beaches, beautiful mountains, nature, the culture, the food was so rich. I mean, look, of course, like Italy's beautiful and France and Spain, but I think maybe they felt more familiar because I'd been there on holidays as a child. But Turkey and then India was definitely two highlights for me.
Turkey is very special though, isn't it? And as you say, the Turkish people are so incredibly warm and friendly and yeah, I mean, I've travelled a bit, not as much as you, but the kindness and the friendliness is unsurpassed. Actually, there is something very special about it, and you can't really put your finger on it because I've been to Greece and I love Greece. I absolutely adore Greece, but I find the Turkish people much friendlier. I
think it's a religious thing. In the Quran, I believe it says treat a stranger like a god. So it's like they want to welcome you into their home and their culture because religiously that's kind of what they're taught you should be doing. Like strangers or visitors should be treated like gods. So I think there's a strong alignment between their faith and their kindness to the people that are visiting.
That makes sense. And India, was that profound for you as well? And particularly for your wife because she loves yoga, doesn't she?
Yeah, we spent 1 year in India. It was definitely incredible, and it's like India is just the biggest sensory experience, like the best and worst smells, the best and worst tastes, the best and worst sights. It's just, you know, a complete sensory overload, and it's just so diverse. I know when people think of India, or I did, they're these big bustling cities, but there's also so many spaces where you're just the only people on this mountain, say in the Himalayas. We spent 30 days living in an ashram there, which is how the book starts. And there was a guru there called Ashutosh, and he changed my life in many, many ways and changed my way of thinking. And his voice is a thread throughout a lot of this book, through some lessons and topics that he introduced to me. So that's probably the experience in India that was most shaping and still sits with me today.
So for you, it was a massive spiritual shift for you then?
Definitely. And ironically, the ashram we went to was meant to be a 30-day yoga course. And I only thought of yoga as like the physical sense, but you know, we would do a couple of hours of physical yoga in the morning, but the rest of the day was these internal, deep, philosophical parts of yoga that I was not ready for emotionally, but was definitely completely transformative.
I mean, I love yoga. I practice on a daily basis, and it got me through lockdown. And as you say, yoga it's not just the physical, it's the mental balance really, and sometimes that's the harder bit is when you are in such a difficult position, or you know, you're sort of, I don't know, I mean, I'm sort of, you know, sort of doing something like this, you know, and you're having to concentrate. The good thing about yoga is that you know, you're concentrating so hard on the movement, it does take you into another spiritual realm really, and that does sound very woo, and I make no apologies for that because I'm a bit woo woo, but I love yoga, and I would love, I think more than anything else, that was to go on a proper yoga retreat and actually do that difficult stuff. It's not just the physical, it's the spiritual. So I'm very jealous actually.
You should do it.
Yeah, no, it's on my vision board. It was on my vision board. I did a sort of mini one at the beginning of the year, but next year I don't care if I don't go on any other holidays next year. A yoga retreat is what I want to do, and a proper one, you know, as you say, because I think there's a lot that purport to being yoga.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between a yoga holiday and like we were up at 5 a.m. for this gong where you had to go and do these incredibly crazy body cleanses called shatkarmas that the yogis would have done like thousands of years ago, which involved like detoxifying the stomach by drinking instantly 5 glasses of warm salt water and then making yourself sick to cleanse the stomach. Okay. I write about one in the book where it's called sutranetti, where you get this piece of rubber rope, you put it up through your nose, and then you pull it out through your mouth, and it cleanses like all of your nasal passages. So this definitely wasn't like a yoga holiday. Okay, this was like I think you'd love it though. The resistance you're feeling means you should step into it.
Maybe I need a yoga holiday instead of a retreat. No, joking aside, and as you said, it is about getting right in there, the physicality as well, and the proper cleansing. It's really interesting. Well, we'll quickly talk about toilets, because I know that toilets obviously would have played a part on your travels, because you would have had to, make do. But on the boat, how do you manage with having to sort out the toilet emptying system? I mean, that must be a bit grim.
It's kind of become second nature now, I guess. There's 3 types of toilets you can have on a boat, but we've kind of gone for the one that suits us best, which is a compost toilet. And without getting too graphic, smells and sewage happen when you mix number 1s and number 2s together. But on a compost toilet, they're both kept separately. So it feels a lot more cleaner. It's a lot more easier to handle. I mean, one of the other issues is if you have a cassette toilet, which is essentially what you have in a caravan, where it's like a case underneath where everything goes in, and then when it's full you kind of lift it up and it's really heavy. When we bought the boat, it had that, and we felt we were very much dictated on our movements by our toilet, because you'd have 2 cassettes that take about 3 days to fill. So if within 6 days you filled them, you have to move to a point where you can empty them. Whereas with a compost toilet, you become a lot more free, because the solid waste you can like in a compostable bag and take it somewhere where it can go. And your urine waste you can like use as plant fertilizer and stuff like that. So you're kind of more off grid. You're not reliant on the system of points where you can empty them. But it's a very small price to pay for the experience of living on a boat.
So Adam, tell me about the daily life of living on living off grid on a canal boat. How does that look? So what does your daily life consist, or is it every day different?
Yeah, I'd say every day is different. I think living on a boat obviously is fascinating, but you still function your day-to-day life like anyone else. It's sometimes funny because I've obviously built this platform initially because I lived on a boat, and anytime I go somewhere, people are, oh, how's the boat? And I'm like, oh, good, how's your house? As in like, it ultimately just becomes the place you live. Like we have to move it every 2 weeks based on the license we've chosen. But, other than that, you can kind of function as any other home. We love the freedom of being able to move around. We've been based around Milton Keynes for a while, because after 5 years, like we've been up to North Wales in the mountains. We've spent some time in Nottingham, in Birmingham, in Oxford. But we were kind of looking to plant some roots. We wanted to, keep consistent friends. Like the community is amazing, but it's quite transient because everyone's moving all the time. Wanted to join a gym, wanted a bit more of like stability, I think, as we were coming into this next phase of our lives. So the day-to-day life is kind of comparable in some ways to living in a house, except you're in nature, floating on the water, and just need to make sure your batteries don't run out.
But that's a metaphor for life, really, isn't it?
Yeah, literally.
And I love your social media. It's so uplifting, and I love the fact that you and your wife the other day, that you were going to go out for a meal, and you said, no, we're not going to go out for a meal, we're actually just going to have a picnic on the riverbank. And I love the fact you just laid out everything, and you just had this lovely picnic, and you thought, and you quite rightly said, we've got nature right here, why would we want to go and sit in a restaurant? And I love that, and that kind of encapsulates what you're about, isn't it? It's just making the most of your surroundings.
100%. The joy of what's around you is like often so missed. We're always striving for the next thing, or like, I find it funny, friends like, have you got any holidays booked? And it's such a funny question, because it's like, are you going to escape your daily life anytime soon? And they'll be like, 7 weeks till my holiday. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be excited for holidays, but it feels like there's this sense of how often can we escape our daily life rather than just trying to create a life that feels quite enjoyable. But don't get me wrong, I definitely have days and struggles, and sometimes hate living on the boat, the same as some people might hate the house they're living in. But it becomes a lot more about, I guess, perspective. And for me, feeling calm and content within my headspace is always going to be more important than where I live or what I'm doing, because as we alluded to, you can live in a mansion or live in the Bahamas or live in all these idyllic places, but if you're not feeling good in yourself, then it kind of really doesn't matter.
That's so you can, as you say, you can strive for perfection and wanting, and you get it and you get there and you think, is this it? You know, and as you said, I think that was such an eloquent way that you described it, that the followers, you know, when you get your blue tick or, you know, you get your 10,000 followers, you know, you're going to feel, but you don't. It's just a thing, isn't it?
It's empty.
It's empty. Yeah. It's interesting, actually. It's a salutary tale for life. And food and shopping and the sort of practicalities and obviously the inclement weather we have. How does that all work?
So we have a car. For the first few years we didn't, but we decided to buy a car. So again, we drive to the supermarket to get our food. We do grow quite a lot of vegetables on the roof as well. Like last night we had a salad that was pretty much made up of only things that we'd grown. So that was great. But particularly around Milton Keynes, the canal often runs alongside like pedestrian roads or small car parks or off-road parking. So because we only move every 2 weeks, we'll move the boat, take our little doggy back for a walk, grab the car. It's become a lot more worthwhile having the car, even though we have to think about moving it than before we had one, for things like food shopping, visiting friends, just being able to get places a bit quicker because our lives have become busier and more full than they were a few years ago.
Yeah, and so the practical aspect, like a doctor's surgery and a dentist. I mean, are you sort of Milton Keynes? Is this where you're registered then? Is that how it works?
I'm actually not registered with a GP.
Okay.
I keep meaning to.
Okay.
I keep meaning to.
But that's what you'd have to do though, would it?
Yeah.
Sort of probably in the local area.
We are registered living at my mother-in-law's house in the Midlands. So I actually think I am registered to a GP there from when we were living there in lockdown.
Okay.
So that's our registered address. But it's so funny, like I often need to receive post. So if we're somewhere for a while, you see the dog walkers every morning once you've been there a week, and I'll usually be like, excuse me, do you mind if I get something sent to your house? And they'll be like, yeah, no problem.
Gosh,
or a good friend, Andy, who I think are going to have on the show soon. He's from Milton Keynes and his dad become our postman.
Okay.
So we get some stuff sent to him. You know, you have to be a bit more savvy with it and a bit less afraid to ask people for a favour. But I think people enjoy being of service. So that's my excuse for asking favours all the time.
Oh, no, it's so wonderful. And honestly, there's so much to talk about. Would you mind reading your poem? Or if you could do your poem, that would mean a lot.
Yeah, I'd love to. I've got a poem called What It Means to Be a Man. And, And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope I remember it. So what does it mean to be a man? I've not got the answers, but I'll share some thoughts if I can. You see, a man is not more of a man for the manliness he attains. You don't earn extra man points for avoiding grief or shame. You see, I was raised by 2 women. I've got a feminine side. I feel my feelings real deeply, and I'm not afraid to cry. And I say that with pride. But real men like sports and football, and I've got no interest anymore. I've tried the 6-pack thing 1,000 times, still got no strength in my core. Is it too big, too small, too fat, too hairy? Did he too quickly, too slowly? Is he too timid or too leery? But I'm a husband, I'm an uncle, I'm a son, and I'm a brother. I'm the archetypes of warrior, the jester, king, and lover. I think a true man can be vulnerable, express how he feels inside, knows how to communicate honestly, and has no shame in dropping pride. Because you see, my father, the man that I looked up to, he lost his life to addiction. He could drink 2 bottles of whiskey a day, and that was his affliction. Because men who don't face their own pain are prone to inflict it on another. But you're already more than enough of a man. I'm talking to you, my brother.
That is just incredible. As a boy mum as well, that means so much. Because, it's because, as I say, as men, men are able to be much more open, but to hear that, and it's kind of like got that sort of, that kind of rap sort of vibe to it, and that, what do they call it? It's like beat poetry,
like
and it's
spoken word.
Yeah, and it's just, that's so wonderful, and those words are just so powerful. I think that that should be prescribed in the National Health. That's really, that's really, really moving. Honestly, that's I'm not often speechless, but that's incredible. Thank you so much, Adam. That means a lot. It really does, and I'm sure the listeners will get a lot from that. Thank you. So how can we find you on the socials, talking about socials?
On the socials, it's adam.floatinghome on Instagram and TikTok. And like I said, the book's called Floating Home, Lessons from a Life Less Ordinary by Adam Lind. And hopefully see some of you there.
Absolutely. Well, you're anything but ordinary. And so it's been a joy. Thank you for persevering with the technical issues at the beginning of the show. Really appreciate that. It's been, honestly, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed, so I'm going to wrap up soon. Next week's guest is Elsa Pecci from the Olive Collective. We're going to be talking about menopause. She's got a huge event coming up. And again, I'm so grateful to guests like Adam. So thank you so much once again. Guests make my show. I have a lovely long waiting list. It's a wonderful position to be in. But I tell you what, I would love to ask of you, my listeners and my viewers, is please like and comment and review, because I'd love to know who you are. I'd love to know what you'd like me to discuss, and make sure that I'm doing the right thing, talking about the right thing. So as always, thank you to my producer Chris for coming in, and saving the day, and Adam, and so look forward to seeing Elsa next week. I'm Nancy Stevens. This is a Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show. Have an amazing week.